You were the ideal woman to ask about this because you've already written a book about the myth of perfection and how miserable it's managed to make all of us. And so when we're talking about like perfection during the holidays, girl, you've got this down.
Yeah, burnout, right?
You
Holiday perfectionism leads to burnout.
Oh, and then depression and frustration that everything you expected for the holiday didn't work out because you're tired and bitter.
Right.
So how does it start? I mean, what happens?
You know, a lot of it is our own expectations that we put on ourselves. So much of what we expect, this picture perfect idea, is just unreasonable. And so it's unrealistic. So part of that is making our expectations explicit, like writing down, okay, I expect, you know, Christmas cards mailed by the 1st of November. Like, what are those things that you expect? And then look at them critically and think, well, really, do we have to do Christmas cards every year? And do we have to bake all, you know, homemade treats for all the neighbors? Or how about if we just pick 5? And kind of go through the list and really look at, is this adding to the holidays, or is this kind of something that we can take off the list?
You know, that's so interesting because I'm sure that for people in the back of your mind, you've always assumed you have to have this to make it perfect. Looking at everything listed out would make you think, why was that necessary?
Right, right.
But you've always done it or felt like a failure because you didn't.
Right, and sometimes holiday traditions become burdensome, and it's okay to let go of traditions and start new ones. Sometimes we just hold on to, like, it has to be just like grandma, you know, dinner just like grandma made it for Christmas Eve, or, you know, it doesn't. I mean, that's just a story we tell ourselves, and we can change tradition.
What do you hear from like some of your patients when they come in and go, I feel like I just screwed up everybody's Thanksgiving because of blah, blah, blah? I mean, what are some of the common themes that keep coming back of why it turned so terribly wrong?
Well, I would first say you're not that powerful that you can ruin everyone's Thanksgiving. That's what I would say, is you're not that special.
That's so perfect.
Then I'd ask what, you know, I'd ask more about the situation. So do you have a scenario in mind?
Oh, no, just my best friend called me crying because they live in Virginia and they always had the massive Virginia Christmas at her in-laws' house, who has a horse farm, and they would all go on a sleigh ride and blah, blah, blah. And there was no snow that year, so they couldn't do the sleigh ride. And she literally took it personally that it was somehow her fault that there wasn't enough snow. And I went, you realize you don't control the weather, right? But it destroyed her.
Oh,
yeah.
But that's where traditions can become burdensome, and that's not the point of traditions. Traditions are to bring people together, not to create stress and, you know, sadness and mourning. Right? It's the opposite of what they're supposed to do.
When you're talking first about making the list so that you kind of go over it with maybe your husband or your family and go, what's most important to us? What's the second step after that? Is it getting insight maybe into other stuff kids would like to do, or where do you go from there?
Well, yeah, I think sometimes it's good to ask your kids. That's a great suggestion, because they may not care about most of the things on your list that you're thinking, oh, everybody cares about this. And they may care about things that you don't think are that important. Like we do a tradition of matching Christmas pajamas the night before Christmas. And one year I didn't do it because I thought no one cared. And you would have thought, like, you know, Santa Claus had died. And they were so upset with me. And I didn't even think anybody cared. And I'd spent all this time and money, and I was just like, forget it, I'm not doing it this year. And that's something that they really cared about. So that was good information for me to know. The PJs stay.
Oh,
we're doing that.
That's the great slogan, the PJs stay.
Yes.
So they really wanted to open the album every year and be able to see that continuation of the pajamas every year over the years. That's so cool.
Yeah, and we kind of can tell what year it was based on what PJs people are wearing in the pictures. So yeah, ask your kids what they care about. Ask yourself what you care about, and kind of put those as top priorities, and then let the other things fall off the list.
You know, I think Pinterest has a lot to answer for, especially here in Utah, because it's like it owns us and Pinterest knows it. I mean,
yeah.
But so you see all these beautiful things, and if your efforts fall far short, which is 99% of mine, you know, that makes you feel even more inadequate. Is there a way to kind of combat the fact that it doesn't have to be perfect cookies, or they didn't have to look just the way they did in the picture, or?
Yeah. Don't compare. Like, you know, everybody has strengths, and people show their strengths online. And everybody cares about different things. So I always say, do what you want to do. Like, what if you don't, like, I'm not a crafty person. I love creating music. I love writing. There are things that, you know, I contribute that are unique to me. It's not crafts. And
So you look at a mason jar and it's just a mason jar. You don't picture
I don't
it
think
being
of all
glue
the
gunned and yeah.
and bless the people who do. Like, good for them, you know? Do it. Like, do what you love. If it's not your thing, don't feel like you should do it. So the shoulds are a huge barrier with this holiday perfectionism. Like, I should be doing this, I should be doing. Says who?
You know, it's a really good point about social media because you're right. Every one of us wants to look our best. And so you're right, you put up the very best thing that you managed to do. And that's another thing that makes all the rest of us feel inadequate. Like, well, mine didn't turn out like that.
The thing that's important to remember is there's enough success, there's enough beauty, there's enough joy for everyone. It's not a contest. It's not a contest. Like, everyone can have a good life. It's, you know, like, we always compare ourselves to other people. It's not a contest.
I think that's the most powerful thing you could possibly say. And even though you would think it would be obvious, I think it hits people as an utter shock.
Right.
What do you mean it's not a contest?
Yeah. We value ourselves based on where we rank socially and in any given area, and we don't have to do that. Like, that's optional to rank yourself.
All right. So aside from the pressures of social media and Pinterest, I do love Pinterest, but still it's an easy thing to blame. There's also the expectations maybe of extended family, like your mother-in-law saying, well, we always have Christmas Eve at our house, and I'm sorry that you have to pack all the kids in the car and you have to drive 500 miles, but that's always what we do.
Yeah.
So how do you handle the expectations of an expanded family?
That's so good. So I always say to my clients, your immediate family, so your partner, and if you have children or dogs or whoever, that's your priority. So then you add other things to that. So what does your little family want to do? And then what else can you add in? So mother-in-law or mother or father-in-law, father, they don't get to dictate how you spend your holidays.
It's a powerful thing too, though, because it's family. Because it's like the one thing all of us resonate to, like, oh yeah, you're right. Totally. You know, that's a terrible impulse.
But the beautiful thing about growing up is you get to make your own decisions and you get to disappoint people sometimes. And one of my favorite sayings is, no one died from disappointment. It's like, okay, yeah, they're going to be disappointed if you don't go to the Christmas Eve, and they're going to be fine.
They will live through it. You will see them next year.
Right, and they'll respect you on some level because you set a boundary. And of course, we want people to be happy. We don't want to cause waves. But if doing something is putting your own family at a disadvantage, then it's not worth doing.
Because the kids still pick up on the stress. They know that you're either ticked off or you're stressed or you're frustrated because you're still
resentful.
You're still obeying the demands of somebody else.
Yeah, letting other people dictate what you do and when does not feel good.
Okay, so we've talked a lot about making the list, which is genius, and looking at what really mattered to you. Number 2, asking the other family members what was important, hence the PJs. Number 3, maybe battling against the pressures of social media or outside family. What's the last most important point that you can make that would help people understand why the perfection thing is wrong? It's just not going to help them.
Well, because perfection is impossible. It's unattainable by its definition. And so I always say, go for good enough. Like, oh, you know, good enough cookie is good enough more often than not.
My sister always intones, lower your standards.
Lower your standards and you won't be disappointed. Yeah. Yeah, it's unattainable. And sometimes we link our value to our ability to be perfect or appear perfect. And that's not where our value comes from. Our value comes from the fact that we're a human being and that we have intrinsic value. And so unlinking our worth from our performance is really important.